to Wild Wednesdays. Here we are on this very warm afternoon, I'm sure for most of you. So hopefully we can make this a very cool show. This is part of our summer reading challenge. If you haven't signed up, please visit one of our branches. We have expanded our hours and those can be seen at washocountyllibrary.us. So come on in, get signed up, get your free book for signing up, and then we'll show you how you can earn more prizes throughout the summer, which we have plenty of left. So Gabe, tell us a little bit about conservation ambassadors.
I would love to. Thank you, Martin. The Conservation Ambassadors is an organization we started back about 30 years ago. And what we do is we give a home to wild animals that need help, whether they're animals that have been injured and can't be rehabbed or re-released back out in the woods, or they're wild animals that people have tried to keep illegally as pets. Seems to be a huge problem here in the US where people aren't happy having a dog or a cat as a pet. They try and go with something a little bit different. Unfortunately, it's usually the wild animals that end up needing help at that point. We take these animals in, we're a large rescue center, and our primary purpose is providing an educational opportunity in schools and libraries and seniors communities in our area. So that's normally what we do is you travel to places with the animals to share them and talk about them. But obviously with COVID, we've had to kind of scale that back a bit. And so we're doing some fun virtual things, and that's why we're a part here of Wild Wednesdays.
I think we're making it work. I mean, at least we're able to do this and get the word out about your organization, promote our summer reading challenge and our libraries. But I think we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for sure.
I think so too. And I can't wait to be back up there in person and in sharing these animals. Would you like to get me to go get my first guest?
I can't wait. It's my favorite.
This guy, I'd like to introduce him a little bit first. He is a dinosaur. This creature, the way his shell is, his jaws, his tail, this guy is like a living, breathing dinosaur. And he's just, well, he's the one animal at our center that I don't ever want to get bit by. And you'll understand after you see him. His name is Donatello. This is the real Ninja Turtle. Check him out. Check him out. Isn't he beautiful?
He is.
This is Donatello, and he is the alligator snapping turtle. This guy is set up to live in our southern swamps. And what he does is he sinks down at the bottom of a pond, and he sinks down and he anchors himself. And by anchoring himself, he grabs on with his claws, or he wraps this grasping tail around a log or a rock, and he sits down there and he sits perfectly still. And when he sits perfectly still, you know what happens? Algae starts to grow on his shell. Look at this. This is all algae or moss that grows on his shell, and it makes him look like the bottom of the pond. He sinks down and he sits there so still for so long that he looks like the bottom of the pond or the swamp. Now here's where things get really strange. He opens up his mouth, just like he's doing now. He opens up his mouth, and inside that mouth, I don't know if you can see it, but he has two tongues. He has one tongue, which is a swallowing tongue, just like we do. He has another tongue, which looks like a little skinny pink worm. And he takes that little worm-like tongue and he sits there and he wiggles it from side to side, and he waits and he waits, and a fish might be swimming by, look down and see that wiggling tongue and say, you know what, there's a worm. And he swims down a little too close, and this guy lashes out and captures his prey. Once something is in those jaws, it belongs to him. It belongs to Donatello. Now, I like to tell you why we have it. I want to tell you why we have, even the towel belongs to Donatello. I want to tell you why we have this guy. He came to us from a golf course here in California. Somebody let this beautiful turtle go on a golf course. Now, he could survive, he could live, but he's not supposed to be here in California. These guys are from our southern swamps. If he started living here, he would eat up a lot of turtles that are supposed to be here, a lot of the fish and frogs and even ducks and geese that live here. He would upset the balance of nature. he would be a very, very problematic species, meaning he wouldn't be good for the environment. Well, he came to our center, and I have some great news about this animal that I'd like to share with you. This guy, he's gonna get to go free. He gets to go back out in the wild. He's gonna go to Alabama. He's gonna go back out in the wild and live his 100 years of life out there in the wild, in the swamp, out where he truly belongs. One day, Donatello here, he might be as big as this table, and he might weigh over 150 pounds. His head might be this big around. This is an amazing, amazing creature. Do you guys see how he grabbed on that towel? He is set up to defend himself. In the wild, if you were swimming in a swamp where there were alligator snapping turtles, you really wouldn't need to worry so much. They're pretty shy. But in this situation here where I'm handling him, he's saying, you know what? You better leave me alone, Buster. And I can't say I blame him. That's it. I think that's it for that towel. He's pretty cool. I want to show you underneath. Underneath him, look, he doesn't have much shell down here, does he? Most turtles have a big shell. The names are kind of cool. The top part is called a carapace. The belly part is called a plastron. Kind of cool, where it's carapace and plastron. And usually turtles have a great big plastron, a big shell down here. That's for protection. But this guy doesn't need the shell for protection. Even alligators, for the most part, leave these guys alone. They don't want to lose parts of their nose or tips of their tail to those amazing jaws. Were you able to get some good footage of it inside the mouth there? He's pretty cool. I think he's like a dinosaur. I love him. I'm gonna miss seeing him around here, but I'm very happy that he gets to go back out in the wild and live his life out where he truly belongs. All right, let's say goodbye to Donatello.
Bye, Donatello. He is pretty incredible. How amazing that mouth is, and the snapping too. I can say I jumped a few times.
That was a little bonus. He normally doesn't do that, but today I guess it's a warm day, so he was going to let us know that he didn't want to be messed with. So, are we ready for the big girl?
We keep seeing a little special guest that keps walking through. It's
yes.
Adorable. I was worried about the cat for a minute.
Yes, that's Bear. Bear is pretty. That is the cat that inhabits. He kind of runs the place. He's a wonderful animal. He's pretty smart. He knows which animals he can approach and which ones he should stay away from.
See, and what a great lesson for our friends at home to not take in animals that are wild, that cats can rule the roost at home without needing a wild one. What do you have?
That's a great point, because people ask me all the time, what is your favorite animal? And my favorite animals are my cat and my dog. They really are. They're my pets. They're members of my family. The wild animals are very different. I love sharing them and talking about them, but they should be in the wild. They should be out living life free.
And the cat's a little more comfortable to cuddle with, I think, than Donatello.
Yeah.
Maybe even your next guest?
Maybe even my next, well, this next guest is pretty good cuddler, but it's has a little different implication. I'll talk about it after she's out there. Her name is Miss Piggy. And Miss Piggy, she came to us. Somebody bought Miss Piggy when she was this big. And they read a book on how to take care of her. And they actually did a very good job. They fed her all the right foods and kept her very nice and warm. You know what happened?
She grew.
And then they built her a bigger house, and she grew some more. She kept eating and eating and growing and growing. She was in a high school classroom for a little while. She got even too big for the classroom. The principal said, find a new home for her. And that's when she came to our center. I love her. Her name is Miss Piggy. Hi, Pig. All right, girl. Here she comes.
Oh.
Oh, she's heavy.
Oh.
Isn't she beautiful? This
is big.
She is big. That's about half of her you're seeing right there. This is Miss Piggy, and she is the Burmese Python. Now, the Burmese Python comes from India and the Southeast Asian rainforest. And she lives in the rainforest water where, imagine her in the swamps how well she would blend in with the plants that are there. Look at that pattern. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful, but it's not there to be pretty. It's actually there so that you don't see her. She blends in perfectly into the swamp water. She sits there and being a heavy bodied creature like this size, she eats things that come to the water's edge. She'll eat small creatures that come to the water's edge to get it a drink. When she's smaller, when she's a baby, she climbs trees, and that's where they go get eggs out of birds' nests. One of the things that they survive off of. The Burmese python, constrictor. She's not venomous. She doesn't kill with venom like a rattlesnake does. She kills by squeezing, by constricting. And how she does is she sits there, she flicks her tongue. And look at her go with that tongue. What does she do with that tongue? She's smelling. She sticks that tongue out. She grabs a little piece of air. She brings the air back from the roof of her mouth, where she has a special spot. She touches her tongue, and she can tell what's happening in her world. And she touches her tongue, and she says, hey, there's an animal here. And when it gets too close, she strikes. She grabs on with over 50 teeth she has in her mouth. She grabs on, she pulls that animal in, and she starts to wrap around. And she wraps, and she wraps, and she squeezes, and she squeezes. She squeezes until that animal has passed away. And then she opens her mouth really wide, and she starts to swallow. Now, when she starts to swallow, it takes her about a half an hour to swallow a rabbit, say, an animal that size, and she has to breathe. So cool. Her windpipe sticks out to the side like a snorkel so she can breathe. Her windpipe sticks out the side. She moves her jaws back and forth, and then the muscles take over. The muscles push that rabbit down here into the middle area. You know what's in there? That's her stomach. A snake's not just a head and a tail. They have a stomach and they have lungs, and a big worm sits there for 4 or 5, maybe 6 days. And 4 or 5, maybe 6 days after she eats, the waste, the fur, the bones waste, they're pushed down to the other end. You know what we call that? We call that the dangerous end. That's where she goes to the bathroom. She eats about once a month. That's it. That's why I said once a month. And she goes to the bathroom about once a month. It's a pretty simple life. When she's growing, and she's still growing a little bit now, but she's slowed down. But when she was younger, she was growing up very quickly. When she was growing, she'd have to shed her skin. And she sheds her skin. It's a really cool process. She soaks in the water, and she rubs, and she soaks, and she rubs. And finally, the skin, even the skin that covers those beautiful eyes, peels off her body in one piece, and she goes off the world in a shiny new skin. She sheds her skin now about 3 or 4 times a year, which it's kind of funny. It's the same rate that we shed our skin. We shed our skin about 3 or 4 times a year, only our skin comes off in little tiny pieces. You don't see it. It's just little tiny pieces. When you scratch yourself like this, little skin cells are falling off. Now, the Burmese python, like I said, it's from India. We are having a huge problem with these guys in the state of Florida here in the United States. Some people, whether on purpose or by accident, let some of these guys go into our Florida swamps, and now these guys are out there living where they're not supposed to. It's what's called an invasive species. They're an animal that is not where they belong, and they're becoming a problem. They're eating animals that aren't supposed to be eaten by Burmese pythons. I hope in the coming years we can find a way to solve that problem, because this is a huge, huge problem. Her skin, boy, I wish you could feel her, Morgan. It's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful skin. But it got her in a lot of trouble. People used to like to make boots and belts and wallets and purses out of it. And it is a gorgeous skin, but I think it looks better on the python than it could ever look on a bird, on a purse or a pair of boots or anything like that. And luckily, I think it's kind of lost its allure. People have they don't like to use the skins and the hides and the furs of wild animals any longer to dress ourselves. She moves pretty fast when she strikes, but when she's moving across the ground, she's rather slow. She moves about as fast as we walk. This is a heavy bodied snake, about 100 pounds. It takes her a while to get up some momentum. And how she grips the earth, these scales here, those have a special name. They're called scoots. They're like the bottom of a tank or a tractor. And it grabs the earth, and she kind of pushes herself along. And when she goes along, she doesn't go along in an S motion. She moves in a straight line. Pretty cool. This is zipping along at about as fast as we can walk. So, the stories of somebody being chased through the jungle and the snakes keeping up with them, it's not true. It's just not true. One thing I tell all the students that we visit with the snakes is if people are afraid of snakes, I think there's one thing that everybody can do to kind of get over that if they'd like to, and that's to read books about them, to learn about them. I think we're afraid of things we don't know a lot about, and if we learn just a little bit, we can lose a lot of that fear.
I agree. And we do have lots of books in our library. In fact, the Northwest Reno Library has a display right now because World Snake Day is on July 16th.
That is the best day ever. It's better than Christmas.
For some, I have to kind of, I'm going to read up more because I feel like I need to get over. I'm curious, how long is Miss Piggy?
She is right now 15 feet long.
Okay.
And so I'll pull her other half here up on the table. So don't go anywhere. There we go. That's pretty, whoop. You can see how really long she is. I pull this half up, the other half goes off.
Wow, she is amazing. And there's no chance like Donatello that she can be put back into her natural
No, I wish she could. First, because she's from India, Burma, getting permission to move a snake to that country and to transport it and all that, it would never ever happen. Second, when an animal like this is out of the area, they're a little concerned about maybe diseases that they might pick up and what they could transmit back to the wild populations. So unless the animal is highly endangered with an international reintroduction, it never ever happens. Let's say if somebody had a giant panda, class 1 endangered species like that, then perhaps there's a little bit of a hope. But for these guys, no.
You can always hope, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I do know of people who have reptiles as pets, and some feed live food and some feed frozen. Does Miss Piggy eat live food or frozen?
Miss Piggy would, but
Okay.
we don't feed her live food.
Okay.
We get her food frozen and we thaw it out. We pretend to be alive, and then she dries and she eats it. We do that for a number of reasons. One, all the staff here love animals, and it's hard to take a live creature and put it in to be food.
Right.
Second, the live animal fights back, and you end up with a captive snake in a situation where they're grabbing food and they're maybe not as aggressive as their wild counterparts. They get hurt, they get bit, or they get scratched, and then you end up with an animal that's injured, and you have veterinary issues. So we try and do it the most humane way we possibly can. We order our food; it comes to us frozen, and we thaw it out.
And that's understandable. I mean, I may be thinking more bugs type things. I'm curious, what does Miss Piggy's habitat look like? Since you mentioned water with her skin and shedding.
Yeah, she has a pool. She has it's a big area, and she has a pool that has kind of a rocky side to it, so she can rub her skin up against it. And then her substrate that she comes out on, she used to be on dirt, but she didn't do very well on that. She always dragged all the dirt into her water, into her pool. And then she was on this special aspen shavings. She didn't like that. So do you know what she likes to lay on? Newspapers. She has newspaper down. It stays so clean, and then she doesn't get it on her body, and she goes into the water and she comes out. So it's not the most attractive substrate. Doesn't look like the rainforest in India, but it keeps her very, very nice and healthy and clean.
She does look very healthy and very clean. So she smells with her tongue. I want to say I remember there's something special with her eyes, but I might be confusing that.
There's no eyelids. Look at that. There's no eyelids on a snake. They can't close their eyes. They don't ever close their eyes. They have a clear piece of skin that covers it, that comes off when they shed, but they don't have eyelids, so they can't close them. Something else you brought up earlier about people that have pet snakes. I would never, ever discourage a child from being interested in reptiles. I got my first pet snake when I was in 2nd grade, and I had that snake all the way through college. And I think a lot can be learned. You can give a lot of really good care to a snake or maybe a bearded dragon, but we all have to make good choices. And the pythons and the big boas and the anacondas, those are just silly choices. People get hurt and the animals get sick or injure somebody. It just, those are animals that belong living in the wild or in a zoological setting.
Yeah, well, and seeming as Miss Piggy is 15 feet long and 100 pounds, she probably could take up a whole average household and be, you know.
She could require. It's funny right now. It's been so warm that we actually have to take our whole reptile building and try and cool it down so that the reptiles aren't too warm. And you brought that up earlier about these cold-blooded creatures, the reptiles coming out that are cool. They like the heat, but here when it's 104 like it was the other day, boy, we have to cool down the building, which is normally we have to keep the reptile building about 80 degrees to keep everybody happy. But boy, it's been hot.
Yeah, it has been difficult. I have a question, and I'm sure for most of your animals too, so we really appreciate you taking care of them. Somebody's asking what the lifespans of both Miss Piggy and Donatello would be.
Donatello, over 100 years. Some say 150 years. Imagine that, sort of to live to be 150 years old. A python like this, if nothing happens to her, easily 40 years. Easily 40 years.
That's another thing to consider too, you know, when you choose your pets is how long their lifespan
How long is it?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, in certain sense, but the other thing that we should also consider with the pet trade is whether they come out of the wild or whether they're bred in captivity. They tend to not do it so much anymore, but they used to go and collect animals out of the wild, and that's I would prefer if there's a bearded dragon or a corn snake or whatnot. These are animals that have been bred in captivity and can be well cared for and not affect the wild populations of the animals we love. So.
Well, I am so glad that we get to do this program. Well, it seems like at least for the last few years, it's one of my absolute favorites. Gabe, I can't thank you enough. All of our watchers, thank you so much for joining us today. We will be back on July 14th at 2 o'clock. You can pre-register for the event. It's just a friendly reminder that we'll email you. And then you can join us via Zoom or Facebook again. But until then, sign up for Summer Reading Challenge, read your books on snakes, and let's choose our pets wisely. Gabe, thank you so much.
Thank you. And so everybody have a really special snake day next week.
Thank you.